Okay, so I'm going to start from, obviously the beginning. You grew up in Bombay.
I did.
What were those times like? When you think back to your childhood, what is it that stands out the most in your memory?
I grew up in a large extended family, went to an all-girls school, Queen Mary School next to Kennedy Bridge.
Yeah.
And I guess what stands out is that I had a really happy childhood because I had a very large extended family. I'm an only child myself, but the extended family was pretty large, and we did everything together in like large groups, going for holidays and everything. So I think that stands out for me.
And did a lot of people live together as well?
Yes, I grew up with my parents, my grandparents, and my father's two brothers, unmarried brothers.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So that's a fairly large
Yeah.
group. And you went to college here as well?
I went to Xavier's for a few months, and then I got
Then
very
you went
ill
to-
and
yeah.
could not attend college, and then applied to a lot of American universities, got admitted, and so never went back
Yeah.
to Xavier's.
Okay. How did Harvard happen?
Just by chance, fluke, luck.
Yeah,
I
but it
don't
was
know.
undergraduate studies. It wasn't very common to be,
It was not at all common, and in those days, no undergraduates went actually.
Yeah.
And everyone severely discouraged me. Not my family, but everyone else. The USIS people who knew said, "Don't be silly. You'll never get in." And I just wanted to try, and I just tried. And I wrote to 40 universities that got narrowed down, and then Harvard was the only one where I got admission as well as a scholarship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not a bad choice.
Yeah, it was an amazing thing. I
Yeah.
still can't believe it actually.
Yeah.
So many years later.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was one of those
Yeah, this is the
amazing
70s,
things.
right?
This was, I went in 75.
What was Harvard like in 75?
It was kind of, it still had shades of the 60s when I was there, but kind of fading. I was there through the mid 70s in America and the 80s, and the 80s were very much an era of Thatcher and Reagan and all
Yeah.
that. So in comparison, the 70s were much more like the 60s.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, yeah, at least the shadow of the 60s. What did
Yeah.
you major in?
Literature, but did a lot of film and
Photography courses
yeah.
as well, which is also very interesting to me because this is photography. This is not when digitization hadn't come in such a big way.
Yeah.
What were the, and you were at the sort of center of, a lot of intellectual discourse, being in Harvard. What were the kind of conversations that were happening around photography? Anything that you can remember? I mean, I'm sure there was a lot going on because there was also the time when someone like Susan Sontag was writing on photography. Was published actually, I think 75 or 76.
Okay. I never really took part in any intellectual conversations about
Yeah.
photography.
So anything that you remember of how people were thinking about photography then, or what was trendy? What was the big concern then?
What was prevalent in those days, I think, was street photography, documentary photography, and it's something that I also was very interested in, went into, as opposed to commercial advertising or things that were set up.
Yeah.
Which is also, I think, was kind of leftover of the 60s because that was, what was really prevalent in the 60s as well, that kind of photography.
Yeah.
But my photographic education was very different in the sense that I took mostly independent courses so that I could use the facilities and the dark rooms to do my own work and my own projects. And so I was always I did a lot of independent studies, which was basically fashioning my own projects and my own courses. And I didn't really learn photography, like I never really learned screenwriting. So I approached both of them kind of indirectly. And I was taught photography by a fellow student who was a stringer for the Boston Globe at the time, who was also a student at the time. And so he taught me the basics, how to use the camera, how to print, etc.
So you took more technical
I took help for technical stuff and then developed my own kind of style and my own eye. Didn't really do courses that taught me how to see or what to see or
What did Harvard leave you with? What was your takeaway from Harvard? When
my takeaway was huge. I mean, it opened my eyes. It gave me an entire world. It's impossible actually to
I know,
describe it
but-
because I went from Xavier's to doing, I think one text for the entire year to doing courses like Shakespeare's tragedies, all his tragedies in one semester, all his romances in the other semester. 3,000 courses to choose from. Every semester you had a week where you could shop for courses. That's what it was called. It's still called that.
Yeah.
So instead of a mall, you went into lecture halls to see which courses you wanted to take.
Yeah.
It was huge. I mean, the breadth of knowledge, what you could study, how intensely you could study it, it was really amazing.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
about after Harvard? You stayed on in the US for a bit
Yes,
after Harvard.
I then went to graduate school at NYU.
Yeah.
I was actually at Columbia Film School, but I transferred out to NYU because NYU had a dark room, and I did cinema studies at NYU, and also again did a lot of independent courses in the photo department. Yeah.
Okay. And you, how did you? I know you said that you've said I've read that your decision to come back to India was more an emotional one, but did you not want to stay on for a little longer in terms of your work? I mean, how did you reach that decision? I read somewhere you quoted actually a very beautiful Eliot verse in some interview about coming back, about making a journey and then coming back and discovering a place in you. But what were your concerns? Were they purely emotional or were they also professional? I mean, at that time, was it easy for someone like you to do what you wanted to do there in the US as well?
See, the thing is that Mira's father's nickname for me was Rudderless Ship. So I had no clear career goals or plans. I had, it was purely an emotional decision. I didn't even know what I was going to do because I graduated in cinema studies. I knew I didn't want to teach and I didn't want to be a film critic. Yeah. So my degree, everything I did because I wanted to do it. I liked studying films, but it had no practical kind of consequence in terms of, and I might add that I only did all that because I was on a scholarship. Had my parents been paying high fees, I would have probably been more practical. But I was lucky that I didn't have to be practical and that I could actually follow my heart and do what I wanted, which is what I did. But at the end of those 2 years, I said, now what am I going to do? And so photography was almost, being a professional photographer was almost like a default kind of thing to do. I love photography. It's not that I didn't, but to make it my career, it was because I didn't want to do. I didn't want to teach, and I didn't want to be a critic, and I didn't think I had the personality to be a filmmaker because I didn't at that time. I thought, and rightly so, that filmmakers really have to go out there, be extroverted, sell themselves, sell their projects, be kind of mini army generals, putting together a crew, putting together money. I just didn't feel I had that kind of personality. And photography was just myself with one camera and a few lenses. So,
tell me, you didn't study screenwriting, right?
No, I didn't study screenwriting.
And so, how did you mentioned that it's something that you taught yourself, like photography in a lot of ways. How did you go about that? Did you read a lot of books on screenwriting?
No, I didn't. Actually, I didn't even know that such a thing like the 3-act structure exists when I wrote South Bombay. My education, as I said, was very indirect, but I'm glad it happened that way. For instance, literature taught me a lot of things about character, about point of view, about narrative. Studying films taught me a lot about how you construct a film, how you make a film. And photography taught me about the visual world. So I approached screenwriting through all those three kind of strands when I wrote South Bombay.
And you didn't, did you ever at some point go and read the different theories, whether it was...
I did, and I'm so glad that I didn't start out that way, because had I done it, I would have not continued, because a lot of them are very confusing and very scary in a way, because everything is so like, you have to reach your turning point at this page and that and that and that, and it's all very complicated. So I would not have made it.
Have you ever referred to any of those theories, whether it's
sometimes when I'm stuck, I do, but I've never really actually gained much from it. But sometimes I wish that I had learnt it that way, because sometimes it would be easier rather than trying to kind of forge your own kind of
Yeah.
quirky path.
Yeah, yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah. So Mississippi Masala and Salam Bombay both. Um, I wanted you to talk a little bit about both the processes and how they might have been slightly different. I know that the research was involved for both.
Yeah.
For you. So the director was the same. So tell me about how the processes were different for you.
The processes, how they were different. I guess, sorry, I have to think about this because it's from so long ago.
Sure.
But I suppose when I wrote Mississippi Masala, I was once film old.
Yeah.
And, but otherwise it was, I think, pretty much the same in the sense that, Mira and I were working at it together. No, what was really different is that we had this huge star, Denzel.
Yeah.
And, sorry, there were lots of different, what was also very different was that I was writing about the African American community.
Yeah.
And that, I felt very responsible about getting it right and very scared about not getting it right. Though having said that, Salam Bombay had the same kind of responsibility of not being part of that world, but representing that world and wanting to get it right.
Yeah, actually, that was my next question because I was like, Salam Bombay is based. It is in Bombay, but it's the Bombay right outside where you live, where you grew up, and this is a completely different. Is it important for you as a writer to find certain connects to the story that you're writing?
Well,
even if in your head, like just
as
yourself.
a writer, you always, I think, unconsciously or consciously, most often unconsciously, bring your personality and everything into the characters.
Of course. So, where did you find your points of connects for both these?
With the characters. With the characters.
Right.
I mean, it would sound strange to say because I'm so different from Chaipa and I'm so different from Meena and Mississippi Masala, but made her an only child like I am. You just when you're writing, you bring things in from your own life. I think everyone kind of does that.
And did you work with Mira at the scripting stage a lot as well?
We were friends before we started working together.
You guys met at Harvard, right?
Yeah, we were both college students there. We were both undergrads there. We both got there in this kind of near miraculous way, and we both couldn't figure out how we had, got there. So there were lots of points of contact, lots of similarities. We shared a lot of things. And so my process with her is very different than if it was a purely professional kind of thing with a director. We can't rule out the friendship part of our lives together.
Which is probably the best part. Tell me what the success of Salam Bombay meant for you guys. Again, it must have seemed like, you guys made a great film, but it was your first time and it was 25 years ago. How did the Oscar nomination happen?
I don't know how it happened, but it happened. And at that time, because, I was not a screenwriter, it was my first script, I didn't really realize the import of what had happened. It didn't really strike me as how amazing it was. It was fun and it was great, but it was not like earth-shattering, which it would be now, because now I've been in the industry for 25 years. So if an Oscar nomination happened, it would be a completely different deal than what it was in those days. In those days also, nobody in India knew or cared about Oscars. And so Mira and I were there in LA, and as Mira jokes, Indian government didn't even send a telegram saying congratulations, We were completely out there, nobody knew. They used to broadcast the Oscars on Doordarshan, early in the morning. Nobody knew, nobody watched. It's very different now from when we were there. Very different.
But how did you guys process that success?
Well, it gave me a career for one thing. Salam Bombay gave me a career. And I was always kind of really surprised, but I knew it would do well, but not as well as it did,
But Salam Bombay also gave you a lot of other things. Lifelong friendships, a lot of people in a production house that you guys went on to form.
Absolutely.
The trust came out of that. Tell me a little bit about those journeys.
Okay. The trust, Salam Bolak trust, is still running very
Yeah.
successfully
Yeah.
in Bombay and Delhi.
Yeah.
And sorry, what else?
And the friendships and
The
the
friendships, of
production
course.
house, of
Yeah.
course. The part of a lot of people from the Jigri Dost production house are
Okay.
also from Salam Bombay.
Yeah, Salam Bombay, Mulchan Dedia, who's a the most famous gaffer in India now, started out with Salam Bombay. A lot of people started out and, stayed friends. Hassan Kutty, the late Hassan Kutty, was became India's most well-known continuity person and assistant director. He started out with Salam Bombay. Lots of friendships. Dinar Stafford, Anil Tejani, and when Dinas and I started Jigri those productions to make Little Zizu, my debut film, a lot of the same people came on board, and that was lovely.
Where did the name come from? It's
Jigri Those Productions is actually a name that Mira was thinking of calling her production company, which then became Mirabai Films. And I'd always remembered it, and so when it came time, I said, this is the name I want.
It's a lovely name. I'm glad you used it.
Yeah.
Okay, you've worked on two adaptations, Such a Long Journey.
Actually,
and
more.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I wanted to compare these
Sure.
two. Namesake and Such a Long Journey. Both very popular books, read by lots and lots of people. I just wanted to understand how both these processes were different. The novels are different essentially. How were the processes different? What were how were the challenges different? And did you work with the writer in either?
Okay, I didn't work with the writer in either,
Okay.
and both of them stayed away from the script process and filming. Actually, Rugden came down for the filming for part of it. Jhumpa, I think, I'm not sure about. Yeah, Jhumpa was there in the America part of it, not the calc. So, no, both of them were very hands off with the script, and I didn't really work with them at all. Such a Long Journey was my first adaptation, and so I was very, very nervous about it. I'd never done it before. It's a very different book from The Namesake. It's full of incident, detail, plot, character. It's like extremely dense and long and rich and amazing.
Yeah.
And so
Namesake is almost the polar opposite of that, because it's a very sparse sort of novel, almost something that would be thought unfilmable. In
absolutely,
a lot of ways.
The Namesake is much more interior.
Yeah.
Though The Namesake also spans generations and continents
and journeys and
so they both have a sweep. But I remember Such a Long Journey being much harder to kind of condense into 100 pages. And The Namesake was hard for other reasons, finding out whose story it was, how to convert something that's so interior into something that's exterior, that's cinematic.
Yeah.
So those were the challenges of The Namesake.
And can you remember a couple of things that you changed for both?
Such a Long Journey, I don't think I changed much in Such a Long Journey. Namesake, a couple of scenes I added that were not in the book. One is when after his father dies, Gogol's father dies. In the film, he goes to this barber in a black neighborhood and gets his head shaved. And it's a lovely scene because Mira put this great kind of rap music over it. And then he comes back, and at the airport, his mother and sister are surprised to see him with his shaved head, and they say, his mother says, you didn't have to, and he says, I wanted to. So that scene was new. And for me, it was a way of showing that he had come round to, the Indian kind of side of his life, that he felt a certain regret and a certain kind of almost feeling guilty about his father's death because, he had not been great to his parents. He had kind of favored his girlfriend's parents over his own.
Yeah.
So that scene was new.
Yeah.
I can't think of what else.
There was a place, you guys changed a place. I know that
Mira wanted to make it New York instead of Boston.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was changed, yeah.
Okay.
And of course, also she's a singer
Yeah.
in the film where she's not in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why was that? Why did you?
Again, Mira wanted it so that we could do things with the music and it just give her more of
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
kind of personality rather
Yeah.
than maybe just being a
Yeah.
housewife.
Yeah. Okay, you studied literature. You're familiar with so many books.
Yeah.
Can you, at the top of your head, think of some book that you feel like that would be a really difficult novel to
Well,
adapt?
you know, some novels are really about style, about
Yeah.
the way they are
Yeah.
written.
Yeah.
For instance, God of Small Things.
Yeah.
You could make a film of it, but you would just be making the plot.
Yeah.
You would not be translating the language. And so it would not really be it would not really be in the spirit of the book.
Yeah.
So I think novels where the writing is as important as the story, the way it is written, those are harder, I guess, to translate.
Yeah. Can you think of a couple of adaptations that have worked for you, which you haven't written? Can you think of any that you've liked and any one that you feel like couldn't live up to the book?
Well, I haven't. I've seen a lot of adaptations, which I think are good films, but I haven't necessarily read the books that they were adapted from. I love The Last Emperor.
Yeah.
And I remember actually studying it because I was actually doing, I think, Such a Long Journey at the time. And I actually watched that film and tried to study it to see how they went from past to present, etc. And I remember really liking that adaptation. Of course, Pathar Panchali is one of the most well-known and most well-beloved adaptations. But again, I haven't read the original.
Okay, I want to come to Little Zizou, which, given that you felt for the longest time that you did not have the personality of a filmmaker, you started to make a film quite late in your career.
Yeah.
What was the first idea? What was the first seed of idea? How did you start with the...
You know, I came back from shooting, not shooting, I came back from visiting the set of The Namesake. And I had some time on my hands, and at that time there was a lot going on with fundamentalism around the world, and it was, you know, Bush's America, and there was Osama on one side and Bush on the other side. And in my own little Parsi community, there was someone kind of very junior to both of them, but kind of trying to aspire to that level. And it was out of a sense of frustration at the state of the world that I started on this. I also had never embarked on a Parsi kind of film before because I thought that, you know, the reality could never really match up to whatever I would put on film.
Yeah.
But when I started, I said, hey, you know, actually, and then I made a list of everyone who could act in this film, and there were lots of people at that time. And so I actually wrote parts for specific actors, including my two kids. And I wanted to do something, I wanted to address this business about patriarchy, about, you know, religious fundamentalism, but I wanted to do it with humor.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make a local tale have kind of universal resonance.
Yeah.
And so those were the ideas that went into Little Zizou.
Yeah. But you'd already documented your community in your book, which we'll come to later. Was this also part of the impulse for this, also a sort of documenting your community, or just the ways of your community, not documenting the community itself?
No. I don't think that. I think I could have made the story in any other community.
Yeah.
The reason I did it in my own was two reasons. One is I think that basically first you have to look at yourself before you can point fingers at others.
Yeah.
And secondly, for my first film, I wanted something that I knew really well in terms of a world.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the confidence to kind of make a first film like Mira made South Bombay about a world that was actually out of our comfort zones.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that because I didn't think I could. So I stuck to what I knew best, which was this community that I grew up in.
Tell me about where some of the characters came from.
I don't know actually.
How many of them were amalgamations of people you knew, and how many were direct translations of people you knew?
Well, the two antagonists, the newspaper editor and the religious nut, were based on real people. But of course, they are nobody is.
Of course, yeah.
My kids, I used a lot of their sibling rivalry. That
Yeah.
and many things that I heard them say and do, I put it into the script. Um, Tino Francorsi, the one of the
Yeah.
friends,
Yeah.
I met him at a party, and I loved the way he looked. And when I found out he was half Parsi, half Italian, that
He's
went into
actually
the
half.
script.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The flight sim came out of a real situation, and I'm not allowed to say the name, but a dear friend has actually made a flight simulator like that. I think what was
As well.
enjoyed the most by the community was watching who was going to come next on screen.
Yeah, well, that was practically enjoyed by even
My-
Bombayites who are not part
My
of the
husband
community.
used to say, because whoever I'd meet, I'd say, I'm making a film. You want to be in my film? And my husband, Firdaus, would say, are you crazy? What kind of film are you making? Anyone? Come on, be in my film. So everyone and anyone and everyone was in it. It was made with a great deal of love by the crew and the cast. And, it really was a very pleasant and great experience making the film.
Okay, I also wanted to, what I also found interesting was, such a long journey. Again, um, the way how would you say, I mean, I know that you didn't make your film to portray the community in any way or to document the community, but how would you say the portrayals of the community were different in such a long journey and in Little Sisu?
Well, for one thing, I think Such Long Journey's characters are more middle class, or on
Yeah.
the building and everything is different from Little Zizu. Little Zizu is I mean, no one is practicing kind of black magic in Little Zizu. It's they're listening to Hey Mambo, and so it's Such a Long Journey was the main characters are about a family that has seen better times but are now facing hard times,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Little Zizu really is not about hard times in that sense. It's more about a psychological hard
Yeah.
time that the characters go through.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main
Yeah.
difference that
Yeah.
I would say.
I want to start talking about the book now, but the first question I want to ask you is that I believe that the exhibition you're having an exhibition of your photographs on the community. I believe that your edit for that is slightly different from the book.
Yes, it is.
And two things I heard you mention. One was that this is, but I wanted you to explain more because I didn't understand what you meant. That this edit is a little more courageous, if you will, or you were not. Basically, what you said was that you're not afraid of controversy, courting controversy with this edit, and the other was that you also said that this is more about contextualizing the community in the larger social space, which perhaps the book was not. I wanted you to talk a little bit both about.
When I did the book, there was no visual documentation about the Parsis at all.
Yeah.
And when I did the book, also the first edition, the kind of issues that are confronting us today were not really at the forefront. And so my book was a kind of non-controversial document of the community. Also, when I did the book, I felt responsible to portray not every aspect, but as wide a breadth as I could. My mentor, Raghubir Singh, who started me on this journey, was very eager that I document as much as I could, that I don't stay in one area, make it as broad as possible. When I did the exhibition, I was not concerned about representing the community. I just wanted it to be a visual journey. That's it. So I chose photographs that I liked visually and that I thought would look great on a wall and that I wanted to see blown up. So the show is really a photographer show. It's not really a Parsi photographer show. It's a photographer who photographed Parsis putting up a show. The book is really about the community. It's not about me. It's about the community.
Yeah. Tell me how you started a little bit on how did the journey begin to...
For the book?
Yeah, for the book.
It began a long time ago when I just came back from NYU. Before that, I had come back, I had taken a leave of absence, I bought a camera and I was photographing. And amongst the pictures I took pictures of my family and, aunts, uncles, grandparents. And I met Raghuveer Singh in 82, and he's the one who saw my pictures and said, concentrate on this because you have a feeling, you have unique access, etc. So that's the time when I started out actively working towards a book.
Yeah.
Then South Bombay happened. I was a screenwriter. Photography kind of took a back seat. I got married, and Firdaus, my husband, said, and his name is Firdaus Battiwala. He hates it when people call him Firdaus Taraporevala. My husband said, what are you doing with all this? Do something with it. But, it's all just going to catch fungus and, disintegrate if you don't. So then I started again putting it together, and the first edition was published in 2000. Unfortunately, Raghuveer Singh passed away a year before, and so never saw the book, which I really regret. But I hope he sees it, he can see it from wherever he is, because he was a huge, huge help to me.
Of course, the access, the feeling is there and all of that. It can also be very tricky to for an artist to document their own community, because it's so common for photographers now to work with communities. They look for communities to work with, which are not there. They go out, find a community and document them. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of that, a lot of that work. For example, even someone like Ketiki Sheth, I see her picture here. She's done work with the city community. I can think of so many, really. Karan Kapoor has done work with the Anglo-Indian community. When you see that, what is it that you, how is it tricky in ways for you to be documenting your own community? Is there, how did you see their journey vis-a-vis theirs? Your own journey vis-a-vis theirs?
How is it tricky? I'm just trying to think. I guess the tricky part is not the photographing, it's what you choose to show afterwards.
Yeah.
That's the tricky part. So because I have such a affectionate feeling for my own community, at heart I really don't want to offend anyone or hurt anyone. But other than that, I can't think of any kind of landmines that I negotiated. I can't think.
What about the access? You spoke about it.
Yeah.
How much access did you get from your own community?
I got fantastic access. Everyone was very warm and welcoming and open.
And you also shot in Agyaris.
Yeah. Yeah. You're allowed to actually, except you're not allowed to shoot the central fire, which I didn't ever do. At that time, I was also allowed to shoot at the Towers of Silence. Now it's a complete no-no. I would never be allowed.
Why is that?
Now people have got very paranoid about the Towers of. It's become a very contentious issue, and so now I would never be allowed.
Okay.
Yeah, there's certain things that have kind of divided the community very kind of bitterly. One is the issue of who is or is not a Parsi, and the other is how we dispose of our departed. And these are very emotive issues that people feel very strongly about, one way or another.
What about the response from the community? Has it been uniformly?
Yeah, I even when the book was out, because we are such a, we love to fight, we love to argue. So I was expecting, anything after the book came out, but I was very pleasantly surprised that it was received so warmly and so well, and same with the exhibition actually. Yeah.
Tell me something. What are some of your continuing concerns about the community, and would you want to continue to document the community? And if yes, then in what ways would the journey be different? What else would you like to explore?
I will always continue photographing, whether it will become anything or not. For myself, I will continue photographing, because now I do have a document that spans 35 years, so there would be no point to my stopping it. I mean, if I continue, it would become even, more whatever. Richer, yeah. So I will always continue. I don't know if I'll do a book or show or anything else. I might just do it for myself. So that will continue. I don't think I'll make any more movies on Parsis. Now I'm going to move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Tell me something. What has being a writer brought to your photography? Do you feel like it helps you to build a narrative or tell your story in any way?
No, actually, because I don't do photo stories that well. All my photographs are like single shots.
Yeah.
But within those single shots, when I first started photographing, I did again only for myself. I did these 5 pictures from India. I had printed them small, and I wrote a story around each one of them. It wasn't a photo story, a photo essay in the sense it was a single picture. But within that picture, I created a story of the people in that picture. So in that way, I can spin stories, imaginative stories of, of people in photographs. So in that way, maybe it helped, but I don't know how else.
You actually spoke a little bit about this earlier. How has photography helped in writing? The other way around. I mean,
Well, a lot in terms of
and filmmaking.
screenwriting because it's helped me to think visually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Which I
same thing
think is
with.
essential if you're a screenwriter.
And what about filmmaking?
Same.
Same.
Same. And the fact that, I'm not saying cinematography for films and still photography are the same, not at all. I could never operate a film camera, but I do know my lenses and I do know what I want it to look like and I do know kind of, light and things like that. So it helped, yeah.
How do you edit your work, your photography work?
Yeah.
How do you edit it? Do you take help from other people or do you take opinions from other people for your edits? How does that work?
I pretty much do it on my own. Though, of course, Ketaki is a very old friend
Yeah.
and a very dear friend, and so I show her. I show my husband.
Yeah.
But basically on my own, and it's just a question of getting it down. You start large and then you edit and it's smaller, and then you edit and it's smaller. That's the way I do it. That's the way I did the show.
Raghubir had a very studied approach to photography, whereas someone like Raghu Rai always spoke about it being in the instinct of the moment and being very. Where do you stand on this? What is your approach to photography?
I think more instinctual.
Okay.
Because Raghubir, you're right. It wasn't a studied approach, but Raghubir was very into that. You need to know the history of photography. You need to know the traditions. You need to know Cortez. You need to know Ajay. You need to know this, that, and the other, which I actually kind of glanced through, but I don't know it as well as I should. I instinctively like certain work, and I instinctively don't like certain work, and that's how I approach photography. And the work that I instinctively liked very much and still do is the work of Cartier-Bresson, because for me, the way he used the medium, for me it's the way. What is so unique about photography for me is that it can really capture a moment in a way that films can't do, and books, words can't do. So for me, that is the joy of photography, is capturing a moment and capturing it and rearranging the world to make it make sense stylistically, and all of it come together, form content. That's what I find exciting about photography.
Okay. Other than Bresson, who are some of the photographers who have
Robert
either
Frank,
influenced
Robert
or
Frank, the Americans, Duano, who again did a lot of street work in Paris, Ajay,
yeah,
Cortez, Brassai,
yeah.
a lot of French photographers.
Can you think of anything that you've have you ever consciously paid a tribute to any picture that you really loved, or any photographer that you've really loved with any of your work? It's like okay, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine who's a photographer went to shoot a film in Banaras, and the first shot he took was of a boy leaping from
Like
a boat.
Raghuveer?
Yes, So I was wondering if you've done a tribute somewhere
No, I
or
haven't.
emulated something
Yeah.
that a
I'm too
photographer did.
uneducated to do these tributes.
Yeah, but pictures are pictures are
Yeah.
for the uneducated.
Yeah.
Really, I mean,
No,
your
in terms
pictures.
of,
And
I haven't, as I said, I don't know and I would be thrilled if I could actually do a tribute to someone like Bresson or to Raghubir, but the situation hasn't arisen.
I wanted you to name a couple of films that have either professionally or just simply personally really moved you?
All the films of Fellini. I saw his films when I was an undergraduate at Harvard, and they really spoke to me. They really moved me. They really touched me. The characters I felt I knew. They were like Parsis to me. So yeah, I would say Fellini.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can. Um, okay, Little Zizu was it was about your concerns, of course, that you wanted to speak about the themes of the film, the community, which was the second layer. Um, I also felt like, and I don't know if you tried to do that, but it was also a sort of portrait of a much lesser seen Bombay. Um, I mean, at least to a viewer. I don't know if that was an
Yes,
intended
absolutely.
thing.
It was an intention that these were locations that are not usually seen on film.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, that locations which perhaps is great because they've been documented. I don't know how long
Yeah.
they look the way they look,
Yeah.
or those streets.
Yeah.
You know, so much has you came to Bombay. It was an emotional decision, but the city's changed so much
Yeah.
in the last
Yeah.
20 odd years.
Yeah.
Have you taken well to the way it's been changing, and do you have
Not
no?
really. No.
What are your concerns about the city today?
I'm concerned that that we don't have any sense of heritage, that we are breaking everything down for money, and very soon there's going to be nothing left. And these are buildings that once they're gone, we're never going to be able to get them back. And I think it's really unfortunate. I think it's really unfortunate that even the ones that we say are heritage, it's the most ridiculous thing that you'll keep a facade and then you'll have some skyscraper, shooting up from the middle of a beautiful old bungalow. That's the idea of heritage.
Yeah.
And everything is about development, and everything is about money, and it's going to be a horribly ugly city in a very short time if we continue this way, going
But
this way.
do you feel like his character is changing in other ways as well, not just architecturally or externally, but his
Yeah.
character is changing internally as well?
I think so. From what I read in the papers, I mean, there's horrific stuff going on, and I don't know if it's just Bombay or all over India, but it's. I don't know. Maybe you didn't read about it all when in when I was growing up, but it just seems to be every day seems to bring, every day is more horrific than the next in terms of what comes in our newspapers.
Yeah, yeah. But it's also interesting because for us, do you feel that in the last 20 years or 25 years, has there been any incident that you feel the city has changed around? In the way that 9/11 changed New York in a lot of ways, not just the fact that the towers are no longer there, but it's a slightly different
Of
city.
course, I think all the bombings and the riots completely changed the character of the city. The city that I grew up in was very different in terms of tolerance, and I mean, there were riots, but I think now people have really sort of closed themselves into their various communities. And I grew up in a different city which was genuinely cosmopolitan. Bombay was.
Yeah. What endures? What is something that survived through all the years in Bombay?
All those gyms at Marine Line. Parsi gym, Hindu gym, Islam gym, Christian gym, Catholic gym.
I don't know if they're the same anymore, but yeah, they have survived. Yeah. Okay, final question. What's next for you? Are you going to make another film? I know it's not going to be about Parsi, as you said that.
I'm hoping to. I've been working on something for the past few years, but it's a very large subject. It would be a large film. I want to get the script right before I take it out. So that's something I'm doing. And I'm also writing something for Mira and an American studio that I can't talk about right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you found the personality of a filmmaker? Or have things changed so much?
I think I've adapted the personality to suit my own personality, and I've realized that you don't have to be a certain way to be a filmmaker. That's what I've realized.
Also, things have changed in film. I mean, a lot has changed for filmmakers.
Yeah.
But it's not so difficult
Yeah,
anymore.
that's true. That's
to,
true. And I've
make
certainly
or show.
become an addicted filmmaker, and I certainly want to do it again.
Well, I hope you make a lot of films. Tell me, I know I
Yeah.
said that was the last question,
No,
but
no,
I'm going to
it's
ask you one
fine.
more.
Yeah, sure.
Why did you never think of writing a book?
I have thought of it, and it's something I want to do. It's on my bucket list.
It's on your bucket list.
Yeah.
Will it be fiction or non-fiction?
Fiction.
Okay. Well, then,
But that's a very, that's a huge commitment, you know. I don't know how writers do it. I mean, it takes years, and you're completely isolated, and you have to have so much confidence in what you're doing. And at the end of it, it may
It's
never
also
be published.
fantastic.
I mean,
It's
it's
well,
a very courageous thing to do.
yeah, but it's
which I
also a
haven't done yet.
fantastic journey.
Yeah.
It's a lonely journey, but once
Yeah.
you take a few steps, and it's also a fantastic
Yes.
journey. Well, I hope you write that book and
Thank you.
make that film.
Thank
That'll be all for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.